Start. This is your host, Etisham Hussain. I'm with Carlos Huerta, and today we are going to discuss cloud disaster recovery solutions. I'll quickly introduce Carlos and then hand this over to him. Carlos is an expert. He's our resident expert at all things NetApp at Quick Start. He is a NetApp certified implementation engineer. He's an expert at NetApp storage as well. So you guys are in good hands for the next hour or so. Carlos, please take it from here.
Thank you. Welcome, guys. As we were discussing before, right? Welcome to our Cloud Disaster Recovery Solutions webinar, our free training. And pretty much what we're going to discuss in this training will be the way that we are going to be working with data fabric solutions, right? And what is the whole concept about data fabric? We're gonna as well discuss, the different solutions that we have in order to achieve a hybrid cloud solution. What happens when you don't want to, stand up a complete disaster recovery data center, and what you want to do is you want to go ahead and create a specific cloud instance that will be handling your disaster recovery needs, right? And of course, you can complement that with a lot of different ways that you can use, I don't know, Terraform, or you can create your provisioning, right, for those critical assets that you're going to bring back online. But the most important thing is that you can bring a lot of virtual machines and you can bring a lot of services back online. But what happens with the real asset, which in this case will be your data, right? That is going to be missing. So what happens when you want to replicate between two different hyperscalers, and you don't just want to be using a single one of them? Because nowadays what we're seeing as in a trend is that more and more companies, they are looking to host some of their services in one hyperscaler, and they're going to start looking at some other services that might be better or might be more cost effective in a complete different hyperscaler too. So what happens when you have one of those scenarios where you want to scale out, but at the same time, you want to keep being the owner of the data, right? So all of those solutions will be coming around by using our hybrid cloud, and of course, what we call the data fabric. With no more delay, right, we will start jumping into AWS. We're going to start looking into Azure, right, in order to find out how we can handle both of those hyperscalers. That is what I have planned in this demo. I'm going to show you how easy it's going to be for you to provision things on the cloud, as well as how can you get started real quick with this. So the first concept that we're going to discuss here will be what about the data fabric? So the data fabric will enable customers to share data services, right? And we just call it shared data services, right? It will give you freedom, as you can see right here, right? In other words, we're not going to be locking you guys down to work with a specific, hyperscaler. You can go either one, either or you can work with both of them if that's something that you're going to be looking for. And not just that, right? Eventually, we're going to have, a lot more support for more hyperscalers. So in case that you don't want to use either, Azure or AWS, you have some other options. The way that data fabric works is gonna be to create, this fabric, as you can see right here, right, where you have the ability to move workloads around. And how do you move workloads around? Well, if you're already a NetApp customer, you know that you're going to be working with your volumes, and that's where you're going to, eventually end up storing all of your data. But the other thing that it's worth to mention is that we can actually use SnapMirror to move things around, right? And kind of the core of the data fabric solution, right, is going to be, the SnapMirror, sorry, the SnapMirror protocol. And that is going to achieve the following things, right? You're going to be able to connect different data management environments across this dispersed clouds, right? And you're going to be able to, create some cohesion between them, right? As you can identify right here, you will remain in control. That's kind of the big deal, right? Because sometimes, I don't know if you have heard, the horror stories where you have, gone through lift and shift to the cloud, and now you're running on one of the hyperscalers, and then from all of a sudden, one of the servers they decide to fail, right? And the SLA will cover that you can get back to work fairly quick, right, or real quick, but it's not going to cover your data, right? So your data might be gone, and of course that's not going to be part of the SLA, right? So that's something that you always got to keep in mind. So the solutions for the hybrid cloud, as you can identify right here, the more endpoints that we have, the better, right? Why? Because eventually you can go and you can say, hey, I want to run my business analytics, in one hyperscaler. I want to run, my I don't know, some other service, um, artificial intelligence, deep machine learning, right, into a complete different provider. So the whole idea about this hybrid cloud is to have the ability to provide storage for either or both of those solutions. We're going to be working with built-in technologies in ONTAP software. So yeah, you're still using NetApp, right? That means that if I have a workload that is currently being stored on-prem, right, in my own gear, um, I don't need to learn something new, right? I can extend what I have already, and then I can still use it as you're currently using your storage arrays. Of course, there's going to be some little caveats right there, right? You're going to be working with an instance or a virtual machine, call it in the way that you want, depending on the hyperscaler. But eventually, you're going to be able to shift your data directly to cloud, and then eventually, if you want to save cost, right? Because you have some initiative to migrate some of those workloads to the cloud, you still have the ability to control what's going on with your data. And at any given point, if for some reason you don't like one of those cloud providers, you can eventually lift and shift that provider, right? Because you're still being the owner of it. And of course, on top of that, we're going to have some additional software as service offerings from a portal that we call Cloud Central, right? We also offer a complete different set of tools, APIs, analytics that you can use to identify exactly what's going on with your data, and of course, how much cost you're going to be, involved in those different operations. So the main idea about the data fabric deployment models, there is different ways that you can achieve this, right? We have from you're working on your private cloud. That means that you're running on on-prem or on-premises, right? You have your fast systems with spinning disk, or you can have your Solidifier cluster, or you can have a storage grid solution, right? Or you can even have a software-defined storage architecture with ONTAP Select running on ESX servers, KVMs, OpenStack, that kind of definitions, or that kind of different, hardware. So as you can see right here, we're running ONTAP, well, for the most part in fast AFF systems, right, and Select, so you can, replicate data between them without any problems. But you can also extend by using the Samira technology to Solidifier clusters. Depending on the version of ONTAP, might be back and forward. There are some times where you can only, create in older versions, your volumes or LUNs in, a Solidifier cluster, and then transfer it over a fast or an AFF system. And as well as you can go and you can start using an offering that we have that is called NetApp Private Storage. So what NetApp Private Storage is the ability that you have to deploy your own gear, right, on a dedicated cage and Equinix or some other, um, um, uh, collocation. And this, data centers or disk cages, they're going to be provided as well with, almost direct link to, the cloud providers. So at that point, you're going to have, we call it near cloud, right? Because you're like right next door to, AWS, Azure, IBM SoftLayer, data centers. So you can potentially use their services, but instead of relying on their own servers and data storage, you're going to be working with your own set of hard drives. So this is another way that you can work. And of course, notice that you can use Zamir to connect any endpoint. So you can replicate from here to here, or you can even instance a virtual machine running on Azure, or create a proper AWS instance, which is a different way to call it, another virtual machine, right? On AWS or Azure gear, and that machine is going to be running on ONTAP, right? And then at that point, you can go and you can replicate right from your on-prem directly to this specific cloud solution, right? Now, this might seem too complicated, right? Too convoluted. But in the reality, it will be pretty simple for you to start, provisioning resources onto the cloud, and eventually start working with those resources and replicate data and move things back and forth. So yeah, that will be, the way to do it. The easier, the better. So we're gonna assume, we're gonna make some assumptions right here. Notice that we need to provide encryption, we need to provide compression, we need to provide deduplication, security, and of course, we have the ability to have multiple endpoints. So at any given point in time, what you can do is you can decide to go ahead and replicate data from your on-prem, right, from here, right, onto the cloud, or probably, from here to your, MPS solution, or probably from here, or, the data is actually coming directly from a select, and then you're, using, like another leg on a replication hub, right, to a completely different, architecture. So there's multiple ways that you can have, that data, across the board, and then eventually you can go and you can make as many hubs as you need to create. So that's the whole idea. So if we think about, the advantages that you get is, first of all, you will remain being the owner of your data, right? So it's not going to be running on, well, it is going to be running on AWS or Azure hardware, but at the same time, you have the ability to, pull it out anytime that you want, right? Of course, there is, connectivity and there's replication involved, of course, right? But eventually, what you can do is you can say like, hey, you know what? I want to work with AWS. You know what? It's becoming too expensive, and Azure is giving me a better offer. Again, depending on connectivity and such, you can go and you can, replicate your data directly to Azure, or you can replicate your data back to on-prem. Or eventually, you can go and you can move some of those workloads directly to GCP, right? So that's kind of the big deal. And that comes hand by hand by using also a NetApp private storage, because you have your own gear, right? And this gear is all yours. It's your system. You decide when you want to scale it. You decide what kind of hard drives you're going to put in it, right? So this is, for the storage administrator that want to remain in control, but at the same time offer, different solutions for different people running in different clouds or hyperscalers, right? But at the end of the day, if you have a GDR compliance, or you want to make sure that nobody holds your data and you're the only source of the data, you can do that, right? Of course, there is some other ways, right? If you don't want to have, additional gears, you want to have this capital expense of the gear itself, and depreciation and all those things that they go around with gear. And if you want to ship directly to cloud and you want to have infrastructure as service, well, at that point we can also offer that. So the main idea will be that you're going to be working with this shared data transport. In other words, shared data transport, that means a SNAP protocol, that you can have endpoints being replication endpoints, a replication from one volume to another volume, right? Or probably you want to have, a vault. So you have your, system, AFF system on-prem, and it's pretty expensive, right? Those SSDs, it's giving you top peak performance, but eventually you don't want to keep those volumes sitting on expensive storage all the time. So what you can do is you can establish a SnapMirror replication to a cloud instance, and you can keep it there forever. Well, not forever, but for a long period of time. So instead of spending really expensive storage, you can go and you can say like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna keep them for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, right? Because it's not gonna be as expensive. And what happens if for some reason you want to optimize your AFF systems on-prem? Can I have another way? Yes, we can start using tiering. So what data tiering is, we can keep our most frequently accessed blocks on our SSDs, and then eventually something that is not going to require that crazy amount of performance anymore, because those blocks, they become not not frequently used. At that point, we can shift them directly to an S3 bucket. So that S3 bucket might be on a storage grid system, which is our own object-based storage. Might be in an S3 bucket on the cloud as well, in AWS or Azure. So we can actually do some tiering right directly from our AFF systems. So yeah, as you can see right here, if for some reason you're using ONTAP select, you can also do tiering directly to any one of these Ceph or OpenStack Swift or homegrown S3 compatible bucket. At that point, we can start tiering over there, or you can go straight up to the cloud, right? So well, it has been a lot of talk about what kind of operations we can perform, but now it's time for us to get in touch with how do we do that, right? So at this point, one of the most important web pages that you're going to be working with is going to be cloud.net.com. In this specific web page, this is the way that you can go and you can start defining what kind of services you can access, right? And of course, you can go and you can stand up additional data containers. So as you can see right here, right, there is different data services that will be provided directly by that cloud cloud.net.com portal. In this specific training, what we're going to cover is going to be Cloud Volumes ONTAP. That is what I'm going to show you, right? Which is part of the cloud storage, right? But you need to know that there is some other stuff that we provide, right? Cloud Sync Service, if you want to synchronize, NFS or CIFS data, and you want to transfer that to another container. It might be whatever container it might be. An S3 bucket on, I don't know, AWS or Azure, or probably a complete different, system that we support. You can totally do that, right? So that's just to maintain, your files synchronized across different platforms, right? So that's one of those. Cloud tiering is the way that you are going to be shifting those unused blocks or not frequently accessed blocks directly to an S3 bucket. So yeah, there's different services that we can use with no problem. Of course, I do not have enough time, right, in 1 hour to cover all of them, but well, so yeah, we can do a lot of things. Now, the cloud workloads, as you can see right here, there's main use cases such as enterprise workloads, for example. That's what we're going to cover right here: disaster recovery for those enterprise workloads. But as you can see right here, we also offer backup and archive solutions. We offer database solutions. We offer analytics, file services. So it depends, what kind of solution do we have. That can be done directly by using a ONTAP system running on the cloud. That's why we call it Cloud Volumes ONTAP. Or it might be just a volume that is being hosted, behind the scene on a NetApp controller, and it's going to be available to you, right, only on a per consumption basis. So that's what we call Cloud Volume Service, right? So what is a big difference? We're going to discuss that in a second, but Cloud Volumes ONTAP is going to be kind of a full-fledged ONTAP system. It is not full-fledged, but for technical reasons, it looks like a full-fledged ONTAP system. So you can create shares, you can create exports, you can create LUNs, and you can map those LUNs to multiple cloud instances that you might be running with, or you're going to be working on cloud, of course. So yeah, so when it comes to cloud storage, as you can see right here, we're going to be working with Cloud Volumes ONTAP, right? We're going to be working with Cloud Volume Services for AWS or for Azure. It's called Azure NetApp Files, right? And we also offer something for a GCP, as you can see right there, Cloud Volume Service. So the main idea about this specific topic, right, Cloud Volumes ONTAP, is, as I was telling you before, to have a full-fledged, storage array, or as close as it can be, right? You're going to have an instance or a virtual machine that is going to be running ONTAP. And if you're comfortable working with your system manager, for those system administrators that they know what system manager is, it's our graphical user interface for ONTAP systems. You will be like home. You can go ahead and you can create your volumes, you can create your junctions, you can create your exports, your NFS, your CIF shares, you can create iSCSI LUNs, you can map those iSCSI LUNs, so you're going to be like home, right? At home at that point. So the main idea about Cloud Volumes ONTAP is that you're going to have enterprise data and storage management running natively in the cloud. So instead of having hard drives within your own data center, you're actually using those hard drives that will be provided directly by one of these hypervisors. So eventually you can go ahead and you can add additional hard drives coming from a server. Or what happens if for some reason you max out your instance? Oh, you can spin up another instance, right? And probably you want to go and you want to turn on that instance at different times through the day. Sometimes you're not going to be using them. You are not going to have replication at that time. You can shut it down, right? And just bring it up at the time that you're going to be updating your mirrors, right? Or vaults, depending on what you guys want to do. So it's going to be pre-configured to match your workload requirements. So we have different recipes, right? Or different solutions that you can go and you can click. You can select from with a button, with a click of a button. And you're going to be deploying the right system for the right workload. So you're not going to be over provisioning, or you're not going to be spending additional money, right? In case that you over provision things. Ability to synchronize and manage both in cloud and on-premise data. So this is one of the coolest things that we have. Every time you're going to be working with, actually it's called Cloud Manager, and I'm gonna present to you Cloud Manager in a bit. What you can actually do is you can go ahead and you can drag and drop things, and at that point the mirrors are going to be created, and then you can eventually go ahead and you can start adding your on-prem systems, and you can drag and drop directly to cloud. You can reverse the replication, right? So that's kind of an additional layer of management. And the main use case for that specific management tool is to make your life so much easier. So you're not gonna need to be a NetApp expert, right? Or have a lot of years working and dealing with NetApp. If the only thing that you want to do is you want to transport your data from on-prem to cloud, or vice versa, right? Or what happens if for some reason you don't want to even deal with that, right? And you have an application that is going to be natively built in cloud, or you're going to lift and shift, and you want to provide CIFS, NFS, or iSCSI protocol access. So at that point, you can spin up one of these, and then you can go ahead and you can start creating your NFS or SMB, and you can take backups and you can replicate somewhere else if it's needed, right? So that's the whole idea. So in other words, how does this look like? All right, let me switch to a demo that I have right here. Right, so give me 1 second. Let me enter full screen mode. And this is actually a system that we have, well, that I spend up, a good amount of time to create, right? So what I did in this specific case, well, I tried to beat a little bit the time and go ahead and spin up an instance, but well, still spinning up. So no worries, I have another plan. But the way that you can go ahead and you can provision something in cloud is quite simple, right? So the first thing that we got to do is we got to go to our Cloud Central, right? I'm going to go back to Cloud Central real quick. And right here, you're going to sign up. I already signed up, so I can log out. I can log in. I can create my own account. That's not going to be a big deal, right? And once that you log in, the next step that you're going to do is you're going to go to Cloud Volumes ONTAP. And once that you go to Cloud Volumes ONTAP, you can go and you can create a new Cloud Manager. So Cloud Manager, as I told you, is the graphical user interface that we have that will make your life so much easier, because at that point you can go and you can provision your cloud services. So what I can do is I can deploy one of those cloud managers, and you can define in which hyperscaler you want to provision them. So you can go and you can say like, hey, you know what, I want to deploy in AWS. So it will start asking you for, of course, AWS information. In this case, it will start asking for your AWS access key and your secret key. And on the other hand, right, if I decide not to use this guy, but I decide to use Azure, at this point it will tell you, hey, you need to log in, right? I'm kind of cheating right here because I already have a session to my Azure system, right? So I have everything running right here. I have created my VPN connection, so I can connect from on-prem directly to my cloud instance, right? So I can go and I can ping, and well, this is not actually the IP, right? The IP is going to be found right here in let me show you real quick. I can go to my research group, and then I can go and I can click on my virtual machine, and right here you're going to find your private IP, right? So this is actually my IP. So from my on-prem system, this is my Windows on-prem, right? I can go ahead and I can ping that specific IP, right? And I create a VPN before, so that's Azure and AWS stuff as a prerequisite. So now you can have connectivity directly to that specific system. So as I was telling you before, right, by using this configuration and by logging into your Azure portal, you will be able to spin up a we call it OCCM, or On Command Cloud Manager, right, which is the utility that we are using to eventually provision your ONTAP systems on the cloud, right? So I'm going to make a quick demo of how this thing is done, right? But you can, either way, Google it. So I'm going to go grab this, access key. Oh, sorry, my bad. So used to the Mac keyword, that when I gotta use Windows keyword, it doesn't work. So once that I go ahead and I provide my AWS credentials, for example, at this point the system will ask me, where do I want to go and place, or how do I want to name my on command cloud manager. So I'm going to call it Cloud Manager Cloud Manager 1, right? And you can go and you can define, where, in which region of AWS you want to deploy it. right? So we have, all the regions right here. All the provisioning that I have done so far, it was done on US East. Um, so I'll use that one. And then from here, you can go and you can identify your virtual networking that you have created, which is called VPCs. So at this point, you can go and you can define, hey, I want to use, this VPC, which is my primary one. And then you can go and you can select what kind of subnet do we have, right? That is going to be, configured directly in AWS. So I'm just going to show you real quick how this thing looks like. Where in the specific VPC, which is your virtual private cloud, or your I like to call it networking configuration on the cloud. You can go and you can define how many subnets you're going to have, where they belong. They belong to the VPC that we have created before, which is a primary one, right? So we have a private subnet and we have a public subnet. So the public subnet will have a public IP. Meanwhile, the private subnet, nobody can access it unless you're within the VPN, right? And well, once that I have selected exactly where I'm going to be running those services, I'm going to use the private, because I don't want nobody to poke around my storage stuff, right? I can go ahead and I can create it. So now right here, every time you're going to be deploying a virtual machine or an instance on AWS, you're going to require to have some keys. So right here, you're going to have your keys. In this case, I'm using my AWS key. That's the way that I create it. And notice that right here, it will tell you, hey, you want to have a public IP? Yes or no. In this case, we're not going to need that because we have, internet access on that specific subnet. So we can go and we can say like, oh yeah, whatever, we don't need it. And right here, you can go and you can define, a security group. So this is kind of a firewall associated directly with that instance that we're creating. So at this point, you can go ahead and you can say like, hey, from anywhere, you can connect to this specific, port. In this case, we're using HTTP or HTTPS and SSH. So we don't want to open up for everybody, right? You want to go and you want to say, hey, 192, this is my local network, on-prem network. So if I go and I check my IP address, you will notice that, I'm part of this subnet. Meanwhile, in the cloud, my subnet is completely different. Notice that it's 10.221.0.0/20 and 10.221.16.0.20. So they're completely independent networks, right? They're different subnets. So what I can do right here is I can define exactly who's going to get access. So the only ones that I want to for them to get access, right, is going to be my, the network that I trust, right? So at this point, I can go and I can define, hey, you can only, create access. You can only be the one that goes and, pokes around with my system, right? So at this point, we can do this. You're the only network that I trust. You can of course create additional ones, but in this case, this is the only network that I'm going to trust that will have enough rights to connect to my Cloud Manager in order to improve security. Or you can go and you can even lock it down to a specific IP, right? If that's something that you want. So anyway, I can go and I can create it. So what this thing does is it will connect using the credentials that I provide, the AWS credentials or the Azure credentials, and it will start spinning up a virtual machine. It depends on where you're spinning up that virtual machine. If you're working with Azure, it's called a virtual machine. So you can go here. You can go to my virtual machine. Well, sorry, my resource group, which is the way that you can group all of the things that you're creating within Azure. And right here, you're going to find that I create an OCCM2 AZ because of Azure. And of course, my unique identifier, route leg in this case. So this is actually the virtual machine that I have created, right, for Azure that will allow me to manage Azure, right? Meanwhile, if I go and I take a look on AWS, right, I can go straight up to EC2. That is, how we call it, the virtual machines right here, instances, EC2 instances. And then from here, you can go and you can identify, that I have an OCM right here, right, that I'm spinning up, right? So this is pretty much the way that you can go ahead and you can create, your instance, right? And this is your management instance. Now, if I go back, right, once that this thing starts provisioning, it will take a little bit. um, Eventually, I can come back and I can start working with that, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open another cloud.netapp.com because it takes a little bit to spin up things, and that's why I did this demo yesterday. Well, I started setting up this yesterday so we can be like a cooking show. We can skip forward, right? So you can go to your cloud managers, and let's say that I'm going to be working with this Azure one. So if you notice right here, I have the ability to provision multiple cloud managers. This is not the way that it's supposed to be. I'm just provisioning things just to make sure that you identify how things are going to be provisioned. But eventually, what you can do is you can go to a cloud manager, right? For example, in this case, I'm going to be connecting to the Azure one, right? Come on, come on, taking a little bit. So if you want to establish a more direct connection, notice that you can go ahead and you can always connect directly to the IP, the private IP of your cloud manager, right? Without going through the internet, right? So I can go straight up in this way. And then this is going to take me directly to my cloud manager right here, right? So now what I have done is I will go and I will simulate how do you create an a cloud instance, a cloud volumes ONTAP. So you can click on add working environment, and this is the place where you can go and you can define, hey, now that I have connection to my manager system, how do I provision a storage array? Well, you can go and you can click, hey, I want to provision a storage array. Where? I want to provision it here in Azure, for example. So you can go and you can type, hey, I'm going to provision a system right here. I'm going to call it, I don't know, Azure SVM 2, for example. And I'm going to call it, I'm going to type my password that I'll be using to connect to my storage array and manage it, right? And then I can go ahead and I can say, hey, continue. So this specific things are 100% related to Azure, but they look really similar. So you're going to have the region where this specific VM is going to be running. You're going to find the network where this specific virtual machine or instance will be running. You can also specify the subnet if it's going to be private, right, or not. So at this point, if you notice, it is really, really similar to what we have done in AWS, right? So I can click on continue, and right here you can go and you can define, what type of licensing you want to use. If you're going to be pay-as-you-go licensing, right? So if you use it, if you don't use it, don't pay for it. Or if you already bought a license with NetApp, you can bring your own license, and you can also put right here your support account, and you're gonna get all the entitlements, the software entitlements that you have purchased with NetApp. So in this case, we're gonna be using bring your own pay as you go. And notice that this is the pre-configured packages that I was telling you before, where in this case you can go and you can define, hey, I'm going to create a small proof of concept, or I want to be running a database right here, or cost-effective disaster recovery. So you will notice that your disk type, it might be different. In this case, it's standard storage hard drives, right? In this case, it's going to be premium storage SSDs, right? And highest performance, notice that this is going to be premium storage SSDs, but the hard drive type is the hard drive size is going to be 4 terabytes. So depending on the workload that you're going to be working with, you can select exactly one of these packages, or you can create your own. And you can go and you can say like, hey, I want to create my own I want to create, something small, something standard, or something that is like fast or as fast as it can be. So at this point, I can go and I can say like, no, you know what? I'm gonna go and I'm gonna create something cheap, right? Because this is a demo, right? So notice that the VM is gonna change, and right here you can go and you can define if you're gonna be working with, premium storage. You can also define, what size of hard drives you're gonna be dealing with, right? So eventually you can add additional hard drives. What is the size of those hard drives that you're going to be adding? Or if you're going to be working with, standard. So at this point, you can select either one of them, right? I'm going to just select the premium one. And then you can specify if this is going to be a warm system. Notice that this is a preview, so it's not fully supported. Warm stands for write once, read many. So, you write once, compliance, and then you can read as much as possible, right? Without, that data being changed at all, right? And right here, you can go and you can provision immediately a volume. I'm going to call it SVM, CIFS, CIFS share 123, right? The volume size is going to be, 4 gigs, for example. And right here, I can go and I can define what protocol am I using. I'm going to be working with CIFS. So right here, I can go and I can say like, hey, yeah, I'm going to be using CIFS, everybody full control, or you can change it depending on, your settings. You can eventually change it, of course. DNS, right? Active Directory. So I have a VPN, so I can piggyback that directly to my Active Directory system that I have on-prem, right? So you can go ahead and you can define exactly, what kind of credentials you're going to be working on. It will give you a summary, right? You're going to be like, yeah, that looks good, right? And then it says, are you sure you want to deploy this? Yes, I'm sure that I want to deploy this. Notice that we have the API request. So if you want to create multiple of these instances, right, you can go and you can check on the API request, and that is going to tell you exactly, how you can programmatically create more of these instances, and of course change whatever that you decide to change, right? So once that you have selected all of this, you can click on go, and this is going to start, deploying your system, right? So you're going to see that this is going to start, spinning up, and eventually, you're going to see, the resources being created, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check right here, Azure SVM2 resource group. I have created this before, right? So we can make a demo real quick. I'm running out of time, so yeah. So eventually you're going to have something like this, right? So my plan was, to demo AWS and Azure, but yeah, we're not going to have enough time. So once that you're going to be working with Azure, you can go ahead and you can click on this thing. Notice that it says action required. This is mainly because we have not registered this thing with auto support. So that's why it's complaining. But if you notice right here, it tells you right away which one is our IP address, right? This is from our private network. So if I go to my virtual machine right here, and I go straight up to my virtual machine, this is my VM, right? You're gonna find that this is the IP address of our system, if I recall correctly. Yep. So, well, it is not. It is not. It is not 67, but because our SE has multiple IPs, that's mainly because. So you can go ahead and you can say like, hey, you know what? Yeah, let me analyze what do we have right here. So you will notice right here that we have a system that is online, right? That has been used this specific amount of capacity, right? Notice that you can start creating additional volumes, additional capacity. If you don't know exactly what to do and you want to start, consuming data from it, you can come here and you can see the mount. And that is going to tell you, hey, if you want to connect, this is actually how do you connect to it. So you can go right here and you can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect to it. So I'm going to go to my computer, right? And I'm going to connect directly to my system running on Azure, right? So there you go. I'm going to connect to it, and it will take a minute because we're going from one side of the country to the other one. Our on-prem is located in West Coast, and our um, cloud instance is located in the East Coast, right, of the United States. So that's great. So right here we have data going back and forth, right? So I can go ahead and I can create, let me write some data. I don't want to write a lot. So I can go to course files and I can say like, oh, I'm going to write this data, not that much data right here. And then I'm putting those things directly in, Azure in this case, right? So that's great. Now we're writing data. Actually, I'm going to write the same data. Well, actually only two of those, right, on-prem to make my next demo real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect to my on-prem system, right? I have my on-prem right here, and then I can paste this stuff right here. What a difference, right? And there you go. So right here, I have test data 1. I'm going to rename it, right? I'm going to call it test data 99, right? Just to make sure that we can identify them, that they're different on-prem from cloud. And then test data 90, for example, right? Which is different than the one that we have, on the cloud, right? Which is 1, 2, 3. Now, the next topic that we're going to discuss real quick right here will be, well, now that we're running on the cloud, what else can we do? All right, so what we can do right here, right, is going to be to add my storage array, my on-prem storage array. So you can have a working environment. You can discover your ONTAP system on-prem. Notice that you can discover things that are running on IBM Cloud, SoftLayer, Azure, or AWS. So I'm going to use one of my on-prem systems. You can specify the IP that you use to connect to the system, the user, and the password, right? And then what this thing is going to do is it will be able to connect back to your storage array, right? Notice that this thing is my on-prem cluster, right? I can go and I can open up right here. You can see by the IPs that I'm connecting to a local IP, right, within my own subnet. And then I'm connecting over here, right? I'm going to show you in a second. So there you go. I have connected here, right, to my on-prem. So now I can control my on-prem and I can control my AWS, what am I saying? My Azure, solution, right? Admin, NetApp one, bang, there you go. So now this is my on-prem system. If I go, I can go and I can check my SVM, and I can see that this is my on-prem, SVM on-prem, and I have my volumes, I have my shares, I have my share right here, on-prem SVM, right? And I have my data that it's, populated right here, on-prem. Give me 1 second, right here. So now it's gonna be time for us to replicate data all the way up to the cloud. So how do we do that? We use drag and drop. So you just go, drag and drop, and then this is gonna initiate your replication. So it will tell you what kind of volume do you want to replicate. Now let me go back to on-prem and let's see what volume do we need to replicate. This is actually the share that we were working on. So I'm gonna replicate this and be SIF's volume. So let's go back right here. This is the one that I want to replicate, right? And then how you want to call the destination volume. Instead of copy, I'm going to call it disaster recovery, for example, right? And then you can define, if it's going to be in standard storage or if it's going to be on, expensive storage. Yeah, I want to do this, right? For example, standard, continue, right? What is the maximum amount of bandwidth that I want to dedicate for this replication? Where VPN, so you need to be careful, right? In case you have a direct connection from AWS or from Azure to your on-prem, well, at that point you also need to be careful. How much of that data you will be using. This is only meant to be used as disaster recovery, so I'm going to use the whole bandwidth that we have. right? And then you can go and you can define exactly what you're going to be, replicating, how you're going to be replicating. I want to have a mirror and a backup, right? And then you can go and you can define how often you're going to be replicating. I want to replicate every, 8 hours, every 5 minutes, depending how close you are. I'm just going to select every hour, right? For demo purposes. So it will tell you, hey, I'm replicating from on-prem to my, Azure system in this case. And it tells you, hey, this is going to cost you money, right? Because you're sending traffic over the, over the cloud provider. So, usually it's going to be associated with cost. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. So then at that point, the system will start provisioning the volumes, right, on your AWS system. Sorry, AWS. What I keep saying AWS, Azure system, and it will start, replicating data, right, eventually. So if I go right here, you cannot see it, right? If I go to protection, you won't be able to see that there is, a volume relationship, but I can connect to my Azure instance. So how do I do that, right? I can go to my AWS right here. And what I can do is I can select right here. And then notice that right here in advance, we can see additional things. We can add tags. We can define, what is the writing speed. Notice that the system automatically have provision, your on-prem SMB SIFs volume disaster recovery. So if I want to be more comfortable and I don't like this interface, can I use my older or my full-fledged interface system manager? And the answer is yes. So it will tell you, oh, we're about to connect to this thing, launch it. Notice that we're connecting directly to my, AWS, again, Azure instance or virtual machine. So yeah, eventually you can use the user and password that you have provided when you set it up right here. And guess what? Oh, if I remember the password right, there you go. I will be able to connect to my system. And, let me compare this guy. This is my on-prem system, right? Does it look familiar? It looks almost the same, right? This is a 9.5 system. And my, Azure, it's even newer. It's 9.5P1, right? Patch 1. So as you can see right here, right? And now we're going to be running on my Azure virtual machine, or if you're running AWS with your AWS instance, they're exactly the same, right? So eventually you can come here and you can see, what's going on with my volumes, right? You can see my SVM, you can see that I have CIFS, NFS, and I SCSI set it up, right? I can go to the junction paths and I can see, my junctions. I can mount my volume, my disaster recovery volume, right? And I'm gonna call it, the disaster recovery. And I can create the share so I can connect to it and I can see exactly if everything has been replicated or not. So I'm going to create the share and I'm going to say what volume you want to share. Of course, all of this can be done from the other interface. I'm just making a demo, if you're used to work with this guy, with System Manager. So, kind of cover both of them. And now I have my on-prem SVM DR. So what I can do potentially is I can go to my system, right? And then I can connect, instead of to my CIF share, I can connect straight up to my disaster recovery. So I can go and I can browse and I'll see right here my disaster recovery. And then guess what? Now I'm working with my test 90 and 99 that I have replicated from on-prem, right? So now, of course, this is going to be, read-only. So if I try to write something right here, the system is going to kick me out. New volume can do because it's, a mirror replication. I can go to my Azure, right, SVM, and I can see exactly that we're replicating stuff. You will notice right here that it says, hey, I'm replicating stuff right here. So how do we, go and perform disaster recovery. So what I can do is I can come here and I can see my replications. You can come here, you can select the replication that you want to manage. Notice that right here, it will tell you which one is a source volume and the disaster recovery. When was the last time that we have replicated? What is the status, the schedule, if it's healthy, if it's not healthy. And you can go and potentially, break the mirror, right? So when you break the mirror, now you're going to have, disaster recovery solutions. And now what we can do is we can connect to my disaster recovery, right, on your cloud instance. And now you can start writing new data, right? New folder. And then I can write data. Now I'm running on Azure at this point. Now, once that I have added new data, right, rename DR data, we need to resynchronize it, right? So what we can do is we can go and we can do reverse resync. So now the target will become the source. So this thing, it will tell you, I'm going to change. Now this is going to be the source. This is the destination. Are you sure? Yes. So now, oh, something went wrong right there. I don't know. Probably it was finishing, the replication or something. So eventually you can go and you can resync. And eventually you're going to be able to reverse the replication, right? Or you can come here, right? See if this is broken off, operations, resync, reverse resync. It's okay to perform reverse resync. And then we can, flip it back, right? There you go. So now this thing has been gone. And then if I go and I replicate, if I go and I take a look right here, now notice that, the source is going to be the Azure one, and the destination is going to be my on-prem. So if I go and I update this guy, right, you will be able to see an on-prem, right, that I have my disaster recovery data, right? And then eventually I can go and I can resynchronize back, right? So what you can actually do, I remember what I did wrong. I didn't click on refresh. What you can do is you can go ahead and you can, again, break the mirror. I guess I want to fail back, right? And notice that the status got to change. And then once that the status changes, then you can reverse your your data once more. And now your disaster recovery will become, again, your disaster recovery. And there you go. So eventually this relationship is going to go back. It's going to go back to the as at the beginning, right? Being the source, the on-prem one, and being the disaster recovery as a target, right? So we kind of flip back and forth, from on-prem to your Azure one. Yep. So that's how it's done, right? Well, we do not have more time for pretty much anything else. And with this, we have covered so far what we were talking about, which is pretty much our disaster recovery solutions, right? Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, if any of you have any questions, I see no one has asked any questions. So it was a very thorough session by Carlos. If you guys have any questions, you can reach out to us at marketing@quickstart.com. You can also call us at 866-991-3924. And thank you, Carlos, for a wonderful session. We'll do another one very soon. Thank you for attending, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.